Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. President Trump set to make an announcement on lowering drug prices. What to expect from the White House? From the war in Ukraine to escalating tension with Venezuela, Secretary of State Marco Rubio shared an update on foreign policy and relations at an end-of-year address. NTD has one student's experience of the Brown University shooting and how the community came together during this tough and confusing situation. A Wisconsin judge is found guilty of helping an illegal immigrant evade federal authorities. Officials say the verdict shows nobody is above the law. And we talked to an economist about the impacts of the big, beautiful bill on the U.S. economy and what to know about Trump's warrior dividend for service members. A Chinese researcher with a U.S. visa is charged for allegedly smuggling E. coli into the country. The case comes after another Chinese national pleaded guilty to similar charges last month.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. Very soon, President Trump will be announcing new deals to lower drug prices for Americans. Numerous international drug makers could be present. In July, President Trump sent letters to leaders of 17 major pharmaceutical companies. He outlined how they should provide so-called most favored nation prices in America. So far, 5 companies have struck deals with the administration to rein in prices. This means Americans will not pay more than those in other developed nations. Trump has long focused on the disparity between drug prices in the U.S. and other wealthy countries. President Trump is set to visit Rocky Mount, North Carolina today, returning to a city he has previously visited during his presidency. The stop comes as the administration continues to highlight its economic agenda. Trump is set to argue that the economy is poised for a surge. He has argued that his policies are aimed at lowering prices, increasing investment, and boosting domestic production. The visit also takes place in a newly redrawn congressional district in North Carolina, where state lawmakers recently adjusted district boundaries ahead of upcoming elections. Rocky Mount is the largest city in the district. Trump's appearance is scheduled for this evening before he travels to Florida for the holiday period. Now, the latest on the months-long TikTok saga, the company has signed a deal to sell most of its U.S. assets to a group of American investors. TikTok's CEO shared the news with employees in a memo yesterday. Here's the report.
Social media giant TikTok is selling just over 80% of its U.S. assets in a move to avoid a ban in the country. Chinese owner ByteDance said Thursday that it had signed binding agreements with 3 major investors: Oracle, Silver Lake, and Abu Dhabi-based MGX. The deal will create a new U.S. company called TikTok USDS joint venture. ByteDance will retain a stake of just under 20%. The move is a big step to end years of worry about TikTok's future in the U.S. It had faced a ban from January this year under a law requiring it to divest its assets in the country over national security concerns. Donald Trump also tried to ban the app during his first term, but later became a fan, crediting it with helping him win last year's election. He opted to delay the January ban upon taking office this year. The deal's details align with a plan unveiled in September.
A postdoctoral researcher from China has been charged for allegedly smuggling E. coli into the United States. FBI Director Kash Patel announced the charges today on X. According to Patel, the visa holder allegedly received biological materials smuggled in a package originating from China. E. coli can contaminate and destroy crops, threatening the food supply. In November, 2 Chinese nationals were charged in Michigan for allegedly smuggling biological materials into the U.S. Patel posted on X, quote, "To all universities and their compliance departments, please be vigilant of this trend." Patel also urged universities to ensure that their researchers obtain the proper import-export licenses for approved biological materials. Secretary of State Marco Rubio held a year-end news conference today to discuss major foreign policy initiatives. One that has been making headlines is tension with Venezuela, which Rubio addressed.
We haven't had a strike in the Caribbean basin in almost 5 weeks. Do you know why? It's not because we stopped looking. It's because no one wants to get on a boat anymore and do that. So it's been effective at cutting that down. Now there's been strikes in the Pacific. So the bottom line is that, sure, our goal is to, I mean, what's the point of doing something? But the change, people want to focus on regime this and this and that. The goal here is very simple. The national interest of the United States. The President of the United States was elected to protect the American people, to protect America.
Rubio said the goal is stability in the region and to protect the United States. The Trump administration has sent thousands of troops to the region along with an aircraft carrier, warships, and fighter jets. The administration has carried out strikes against suspected drug vessels in the region, seized a sanctioned oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela, and declared a blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers entering and leaving Venezuela. Rubio was also asked about recent tension between Japan and China and how that impacts relations with the U.S. and China.
At the end of the day, China is going to be, and it will continue to be a rich and powerful country and a factor in geopolitics. We have to have relations with them. We have to deal with them. We have to find the things we are able to work together on. And I think both sides are mature enough to recognize that there will be points of tension now and for the foreseeable future. Our job as part of responsible statecraft is to find opportunities to work together, because I think if there's a global challenge that China and the U.S. can work together on, I think we can solve it. And there'll be points of tension. We well recognize that, and our job is to balance these two things. I think both sides understand that. And I think we can do that without imperiling or in any way undermining our very firm commitment to our partners in the Indo-Pacific. That includes not just Japan, but South Korea. And obviously, if you extend further out, I don't want to leave anybody out, but India and Australia and New Zealand and all the other countries.
Rubio was also asked about the war between Russia and Ukraine. He said the administration has put a lot of time and energy into helping both sides to come to an agreement, but said at the end of the day, this is their war and it will be up to Russia and Ukraine to decide what they're willing to negotiate to end the war. Rubio revealed that the U.S. has received pledges of up to 7,500 security personnel for a gang suppression force in Haiti. This is part of the UN Security Council's international security mission to combat armed gangs in the country. And he wants people to focus on the kinds of weapons Hamas needs to give up to prevent a threat or attack on Israel as a baseline for disarmament. Rubio made clear no one wants a return to war there. And President Trump says he is not ruling out military action against Venezuela. The comments came in an interview with NBC News published today. Trump also said the U.S. could carry out additional seizures of oil tankers near Venezuelan waters, following last week's seizure of a sanctioned vessel. He also confirmed ordering a blockade of sanctioned tankers entering or leaving the country. The moves are part of a broader pressure campaign targeting Venezuela through its main source of income. Venezuela's government has accused Washington of trying to overthrow Nicolas Maduro. Trump declined to say whether he aims to remove Maduro, saying the Venezuelan leader knows exactly what he wants. The U.S. military says it has struck 2 more boats in the Eastern Pacific, killing 5 alleged narco-terrorists. The military says no U.S. forces were injured during yesterday's operation. Southern Command says the strikes targeted boats linked to designated terrorist organizations operating in international waters. Its statement says the Pentagon ordered the operation after intelligence confirmed the vessels were smuggling drugs. The strikes were part of Operation Southern Spear, under which American forces have already struck dozens of alleged narco-terror boats in the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific. The operation was expanded after the State Department labeled several cartels foreign terrorist organizations. The designation allows the military to strike suspected vessels in order to protect national security. The U.S. has announced a record arms sale package to Taiwan valued at about $11 billion. Joining us to discuss is Rod Martin, geopolitical analyst and founder and CEO of Martin Capital. So good afternoon to you, Rod. Can we get your analysis here on the significance of this? Because if approved by Congress, it will be the largest weapons package ever offered to Taiwan.
It is, and it needs to be more. But I'm very pleased with what the administration has done here. You'll notice that this is defensive in character. It really shouldn't perturb the Communist Party. It really shouldn't if they're decent people and playing according to the rules that we all have to live by. But no, they want to invade Taiwan. So what Trump is doing is he's handing Taiwan another really crucial means to defend itself. This is about half HIMARS. This is about half howitzers. The former give you the ability to blow up ships in the water in the Formosa Strait that could be carrying troops over to the land. The howitzers give you the ability for close-in support and the ability to hit them as they're coming right to the beaches. It's a really important package. It makes a big difference. It's not the only thing that we're doing, but it's a big step in the direction of containing China and keeping it in its own pen, away from our allies and friends.
Okay, it seems like you're saying this is a good move. So what message do you think this $11 billion package is sending to China? Because from what we've seen, China was angered by this. So what is the message, if any?
Well, they're always angered by anything that impinges on their ability to project their own power. And that shouldn't surprise us in the least. This is a great thing. It's one of many things that needs to happen, but you see it as part of a coherent Trump administration strategy to contain China, and it makes a lot more sense. You see that certainly with the nuclear submarine deal with South Korea that is going to tremendously increase American shipbuilding capacity, primarily in the Philadelphia shipyard. That will increase American capability to produce nuclear submarines by about 50%. You see this in the new posture in Japan, where they've just said absolutely clearly, if China attacks Taiwan, China will face our reprisals as well. So what we're building here is a containment structure, not unlike that which we had in the Cold War, which managed to keep the peace for 45 years. And ultimately, the belief is, and I think it's correct, that the internal inconsistencies of the communist system will implode upon themselves in due course if we can just keep them out of a war.
So Rod, I'm very curious as to, from your perspective, what is at stake here against the backdrop of China potentially invading Taiwan?
That is the biggest single thing. I mean, an attack on Taiwan would be horrifying for the entire world, and it would absolutely lead to a global conflict. There's no getting around this, because for the United States to effectively defend its de facto ally in Taipei is going to involve blockading China's coast, not necessarily up close, but certainly at the Straits of Malacca and Sunda, and in the Persian Gulf and elsewhere. China is heavily dependent on energy imports. It's dependent on food imports. These are things that the U.S. Navy can just shut off. That won't happen without a cost. So in all of these cases, can we beat China? Yeah, I think we can. Do we want to have to try? No, we absolutely don't. And if we make Taiwan harder to attack, we avoid a war.
Okay, so I guess this goes in contradiction to what the Chinese Foreign Ministry is saying, because I'll read you a statement here. It said, quote, "This cannot save the doomed fate of Taiwan independence, but will only accelerate military confrontation and war." But what you're saying is this actually reduces the chance of war because it helps Taiwan to defend itself.
China is acting like a bully on the playground here. If you mess with me, there will be horrible consequences. That's just nonsense. If Taiwan is better able to defend its coast from an invading army, it makes it harder for China to attack. What is China going to do? Are they going to nuke Taipei? Are they going to just blow up Taiwan Semiconductor? None of that serves their purpose. They need to capture Taiwan intact. They need to be able to break out of that first island chain. They need to be able to build submarine bases on the Pacific-facing coast. And none of that is made easier by what Donald Trump just did. So they are blustering. They are trying to threaten. They are trying to intimidate. They've got the wrong president for that. This is not Joe Biden. We're going to defend our friends in Taiwan.
Okay, Rod, just one last thing. You said earlier that the United States does not want this war, right? Is an invasion of Taiwan even in the cards, though, for China, given its current economic situation?
I'm reasonably skeptical, honestly. I know China wishes to. I know the CCP has talked about it a lot. It's interesting that they haven't tried it. And not just haven't tried it in the last year or the last decade, haven't tried it in all of the time since the Red government took over and created the People's Republic. So we're talking about an extremely long period of time that they have not attempted this, and there's a very good reason, called the Seventh Fleet. The United States Navy is in the way. They don't want to challenge it. If they did challenge it, yeah, there's a war game recently that suggests America might lose 4 aircraft carriers. I don't necessarily believe that, but I can tell you this, if we lose 4, we've still got a bunch more. They don't have 4 to lose. So this is just a bad calculus. They need to be able to work out a trade deal with the United States that supports an export-driven economy. That is how they have built their future. They don't have the ability to continue moving more consumption into the mix because the population is on the brink of implosion. The demography is just horrible for mainland China. So every day that Donald Trump makes it harder for the Chinese to act on these aggressive threats is a day that their opportunity slips away. And I agree with what you were saying just a moment ago. I think the odds of that threat are actually pretty low anyway.
Well, all right, Rod, terrific insight from you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
NTD has one student's experience of the Brown University shooting and how the community came together during this tough situation. More news after this break.
Don't miss our special coverage of Turning Point's biggest event of the year, America Fest 2025.
This is the greatest nation on earth.
Thousands of students expected to attend the 4-day event, joined by some of the most influential voices in the conservative movement, all to honor Charlie Kirk and the principles he stood for. Watch our special coverage of the convention and our on-the-ground editions of NTD Evening News with Tiffany Meyer at 6 p.m. Eastern and Capitol Report with Steve Lance at 7. Turning Point USA, America Fest 2025, this Thursday through Sunday on NTD.
Looking for a healthy and smooth-tasting brew? Drop by Days Coffee Roasters today and explore our wide selection of specialty-grade, small-batch roasted coffee. Home to North America's first enzyme-fermented coffee, we source a wide selection of specialty-grade coffee beans from around the world, and our baristas are ready to craft your customized brew. Visit Days Coffee at 28 North Street, Middletown, New York. Come experience a brew like no other.
Shenyun Creations, the streaming platform from Shenyun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music. Masterclasses, behind the scenes, comedy, and more. Explore shenyuncreations.com.
President Trump is making an announcement from the White House right now as we speak. Let's take a look.
All over Venezuela, all over the world, the Congo. And now when they come in, they have to pay $1 million. And we've had a tremendous surge, and you're going to be happier than anybody because when you go to Harvard and the Wharton School of Finance and all of the great schools and you want to hire somebody and then you find out that, I'm sorry, they can't stay in our country for more than 24 hours. They graduate from the top schools. These people want to hire them. Now you're able to buy a card and you're able to keep people in the country. They can't keep people in the country, and they go to Canada, they go to other countries. A lot of times they go to Canada even though they work for the companies behind me. So now you're able to buy, the companies are able to buy the card and use it for people coming in to our country so they can stay in our country instead of being immediately shipped out after graduating. They graduate number one in their class at the best school, and they want to go to work for Johnson & Johnson, as an example, who's not here today, who will be here next week. They're well represented here. But they want to go to work for one of the great companies behind me, and you learn they can't do that because they're shipped out of the country. They're not shipped out anymore. So your company will pay a little bit, but that's okay. You'll be able to get them. So I just wanted to let it's called the Gold Card, the Trump Gold Card. Quite a beautiful thing. And you've taken in just a few days, you've taken in over $1.5 billion. That goes all toward reducing debt, goes into the Treasury of the United States. And I thought I'd do this before we start on Most Favored Nations. I want to read this because I would have said it the other night, but I was not allotted too much time, actually. You had a couple of brand new shows opening, and I understand that. But I do want to say, and some people say, oh, you shouldn't say it. It sounds negative. To me, I think it sounds positive. The only reason our unemployment tucked up and went up to 4.5%, which it went up to 4.5%, which is quite a low number, but still, is because we are reducing the government workforce by numbers that have never been seen before. In other words, government jobs are way down. And as you know, we don't need 10 people to fill one job, which is what we had in government in many cases. So the government workforce, by numbers that have never been seen before, has been reduced very substantially, and it will continue to be reduced. 100% of our new jobs are in the private sector. So this is for the last number of months. Think of that, 100%. Are you shocked to hear that? That's the way to make America great again, when you think, right? It's the only way. 100% of new jobs are in the private sector. And I could reduce unemployment to 2%, 1%, or practically zero by just hiring people into the federal government, even though those jobs are not necessary, which is what we had before. We had millions and millions of people having jobs that they never even showed up. So I wish that the media would report that the 4.5% is an amazing number. And again, if they don't report it, I guess maybe I'll just let some people go into the federal workforce. It'll look really wonderful. And what we're doing is the only way you can do it to make a country great. You can't have the government jobs. You have to have the private sector jobs. And these are among the biggest hires of private sector. So we have reduced the federal workforce by tremendous hundreds of thousands of people. And that reflects in unemployment, but that will be used up very quickly. And we've 100% of the new jobs, which, by the way, it's a record-setting number of jobs, too, is in the private sector. And I think that'll get even stronger when these buildings being built all over the country, of which they're building some, too, but AI and auto plants and everything else, they're being built all over the country. When that happens, your numbers will be even better. But I would like you to report it the way it is. We don't do the federal workforce jobs. We're reducing that very substantially. I'm thrilled to be joined by the leaders of 9 of the world's largest pharmaceutical manufacturers, all very big names, celebrities in their own right, very, very powerful people. And they head some of the most admired companies anywhere in the world. It's a great group. To announce that they've agreed to offer many of their flagship drugs, really all of their flagship drugs, at heavily discounted most favored nations prices. In other words, whatever the drug sells for over the world, in the world, whatever the lowest number is, if it's Germany, if it's in UK, anywhere, we will match that price. Right now, sometimes it's 10 times higher we've been laughed at and scoffed at for years. For years. In fact, I was going to do it in my first term, but unfortunately, with the advent of COVID, as you would say, it was not, I don't think it was a very good time to be hitting up Spain, Italy, France, but now we're doing it. So the hardest thing to do was going to be to get a country to do it, because we would have a pill in New York that was for sale for $130, and you could buy it in Germany and France and Spain and someplace anyways. They set their own prices for $10. So we'd pay 10 or 13 times more, pay 5 times more, pay all different prices. Now, whatever the lowest price is. Now, the pharmaceutical companies were difficult, but they also love our country. They knew it was unfair. And they were great. I appreciate it. But the bigger problem was going to be the countries. How are you going to get the countries to do it? And we told them, if you don't do it, we're going to have to use tariffs, and we're going to charge you a 10% tariff, which is far more money than the money we're talking about. And they immediately agreed to do it. So we have all the foreign countries agreeing to do it. If we didn't have the use of tariffs, we would never be able to do this. But we used tariff, and they said, is it a threat? I said, yes, it is a threat. And they said, we will do it. And they dropped the price. So what's happening, because the world is bigger than the United States in terms of people, that same pill would go from $10 to $20 for them, which is an increase, but it wouldn't go to, midway. But it would go from $10 to $20. Ours would go from $130 to $20. So we dropped way down. They went up a little bit. And everyone knows the way it is. They, for years, would just say, no, as medicine got more expensive for us, it would stay. They said, nope, you can't sell it in this country. Let the United States pay. And we had other presidents, all of them, said, okay, we'll pay. So we were subsidizing the entire world. We're not doing it anymore. This is the biggest thing having to do with drugs in the history of the purchase of drugs. And I don't think the maybe press will treat it as a story. This is the biggest front page story that you'll ever see. This is a huge bearing too on the healthcare, because a big part of healthcare is drugs, pharmaceuticals, right, Oz? And this will have a tremendous impact on the reduction of healthcare. The biggest impact is going to be that the money should be paid not to the insurance companies, directly to the people, and the people will buy their own healthcare. So we're going to be working that. The problem is that the Democrats are very much controlled by the insurance companies that make all that money, but we're not going to let that happen. Starting next year, American drug prices will come down fast and furious, and will soon be among the lowest in the developed world. So in other words, whatever the lowest price for a certain drug, of which these companies make much of it, whatever the lowest price is, that price will come down to that price. So we will get the lowest price anywhere in the world. If they're lower in England than they are in Germany, we take the England price. As of today, 14 out of 17 largest pharmaceutical companies have now agreed. 14 out of 17. Oh, those three they're in deep trouble. But actually, they've agreed, because I think those 3 companies are coming in at a different time next week. So they've agreed. Johnson & Johnson is one of them, right?
After the holidays.
Why? They couldn't do it faster?
No, we're going to be talking about Trump RX.
Oh, okay. Trump RX. Trump RX is doing well. As of today, 14 out of the 17 largest pharmaceutical companies, but they've all agreed, have now agreed to drastically lower drug prices for their American patients, for the American people and patients. This represents the greatest victory for patient affordability in the history of American healthcare by far, and every single American will benefit. So this is the biggest thing ever to happen on drug pricing and on healthcare. This will have a tremendous impact on healthcare itself. I want to thank Sanofi CEO Paul Hudson. Paul? Hi, Paul. I hope they have you in some order. I'll be checking.
Alphabetical, yes, but...
Okay, well, we'll do the best we can. Thank you, Paul. Great company, by the way. Novartis CEO Vas Narasimhan. Thank you very much, Vas. Great job. Genentech CEO Ashley Megaragri. Where are you, Ashley? How are you? Hi. Thank you very much. Great companies. Behringer, Inky Mine, President John Michael Boers. John Michael, thank you very much. Gilead CEO Dan O'Day. Yeah. Thank you, Dan. Great job. It's a good company. Bristol Myers Squibb Executive Vice President Carrie Gallman. Carrie? Thank you. Thank you very much. GSK CEO Emma Wormsley. Emma? Thank you very much, Emma. Great job. Merck CEO Rob Davis. Great company. Thank you. Great company. How long have you been CEO? Almost 5 years. Very good. You're doing a good job. And Amgen Executive Vice President and CFO Peter Griffith. Peter? Thank you very much. You okay? Fake news. We want you to be healthy. Are you all right? The camera's not okay, but she's okay. That's more important. We have good medicine for you. If you need some medicine, one of them can take good care of it. We're also joined by Secretaries Robert F. Kennedy, Jr., Howard Lutnick, Ambassador, and really some incredible ambassadors, Administrator of the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, Dr. Mehmet Oz, and the FDA Commissioner, Marty McCary. They're doing a phenomenal job. Thank you. Thank you, fellas. Good job. For decades, Americans have been forced to pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs by far, not just a little bit. We were like a whipping post, the United States, and it's just been 4% of the world's population. We have 4% of the world's population, and consumers pay only 13% of all prescription drugs, yet pharmaceutical companies make 75% of their profits. Think of that. So we have 4% of the population, 13% of prescription drugs, and yet the people behind me, who are wonderful people, make 75% of their profits from the American customer. So they understood that better than anybody, that we have to do something. That's why I signed an executive order instructing my administration to do everything in its power to slash prescription drug prices for Americans while getting other countries to pay more. And we don't want more. We want this fair. We want to pay the same thing. They used to blame it, remember, on research and development. And I said, well, research and development for everybody. And everybody understood it. As a result, the United Kingdom's National Health Service agreed to pay the fair share for prescription drugs for the first time in 26 years. And we expect other countries in Europe will do the same. And if they don't, we're going to put tariffs on them, and we'll get the same amount of money, plus we'll take a nice return on the money. We signed historic agreements with Pfizer, Eli Lilly, AstraZeneca, Novo Nordisk, and EMD, Serrano, to reduce prices by 300, 400, 500, 600, and even 700%, and sometimes even more than that. I remember when I had a news conference in my first term, I was the first president that reduced prices from the beginning of my term to a year, from January to December, 0.25%. And I thought it was the greatest thing, because it's the first one in 28 years. Now we're talking about numbers that are so incredible. 0.25%. Think of that. I was proud of it, because it hadn't happened in 28 where drug prices went down. Well, now you're going to see numbers that nobody would believe possible. Think of that. 500, 600, 700, 800%. Today we're building on these accomplishments. The companies assembled in this room have agreed to offer all of their drugs to Medicaid and most favored nations pricing. You're going to get most favored nations pricing, meaning they're going to pay our country the lowest price paid anywhere in the world. And they will list their most popular drugs on TrumpRx.gov. TrumpRx.gov. And I didn't name it that. Somebody named it that. And I guess they assumed that was, did you name it, Oz? Or Bobby name it?
We all named it together.
Okay, well, I'm honored to have the name. And so far, that's turned out because the numbers are so incredible. It's an honor. And you're going to get massive discounts to all consumers. So massive discounts will be not even offered. It's just going to be a fact. All consumers will get massive discounts. That's TrumpRx.gov. Every new drug produced by these companies in the future will permanently be offered to American patients at most favored nation prices. You know, people used to talk about that for years, but nobody ever did anything about it. No other president did. And it wasn't easy, but it worked out great, and I'm so proud of the people behind me. As an example of the price reductions we have secured through these new agreements, Santa Fe will cut the cost of its blood thinner, Plavix, from $750 to less than $16. Wow. Where's Santa Fe? Where are you? What? That's incredible, huh? Could have gone to $17, maybe. That's amazing. And you're going to do tremendous business. You're going to do much more business. So that's coming from $750. Think of that, $750. And that's the number one blood thinner. I don't want to know about that. I take an aspirin. To less than $16. Think of that. Bristol Myers Squibb, great company, both great companies, will cut the price of HIV medication, Raytaz, from nearly $1,500, $1,500 to $217. And it will cut the cost of hepatitis B medication, Baraclude, from $1,400 to $413. Gilead will cut the hepatitis C medication, Epclusa, from nearly $25,000 to less than $2,500. And all prices are like that because we're bringing them down to the world's lowest price, everything. And these people really are pioneers. What they're doing is so great. And in the end, they're going to do much more business, and it's. I think it's going to even out for them as a company. The countries will have to pay more, but even for them, because of the fact that the world is quite a bit bigger, it won't be very severe, I hope. I also want to thank these companies and their incredible executives for their generous contribution to American national security, because it's really what it is. It's, to a large extent, national security in addition. You can't continue to pay 13, 14 times more than other countries and think you're going to have security. Collectively, they will invest over $150 billion to build up domestic pharmaceutical manufacturing in America. They're going to be, because of tariffs, they're coming in, and I think because of the love of our country, and maybe because of the November 5th election, but because of tariffs, they're going to be coming in. They're building already. Just about all of them have started. They're building their plants in all states all over the country, and they're building incredible pharmaceutical plants. We're going to have close to 100% of our pharmaceuticals in a very short period of time made in the USA. As part of these agreements, Merck will also donate 3.5 tons of antibacterials to be placed in America's strategic reserve. Thank you very much. GSX will donate over 200 pounds of ingredients to make rescue inhalers, which is a big deal, and Bristol Myers Squibb will donate 6.5 tons of blood thinners. We appreciate it. Such amazing companies. Every president for a generation has promised to reduce drug prices, but they were talking about a little bit like that. I am the only one of them to ever even think in terms of favored nations, and that's what this is. Favored nations. It's called most favored nation. We are now a most favored nation. I want to thank the leaders in the room, and I also want to thank the leaders of all of the countries that had to pay a little more so that we were treated fairly. I really do. I want to thank the leaders of countries. And they knew the alternative was not much of an alternative, because if they didn't do it, we were going to charge them tariffs, and the tariffs would have been much more severe than what they did. But they did do it. as soon as they realized about the tariffs. Then they did it very easily. No, they're very good people. Let's start with Amgen's Executive Vice President, who I already introduced, and I introduced the people here. So I'd like to ask Bobby and Oz to say a few words. And also, I'd like to ask if anybody would like to speak on behalf of your company, or just say.
And that's President Trump announcing the U.S. will have most favored nation drug pricing for Americans. And what that means is that the U.S. will match the lowest price of a drug internationally. For example, if Germany and the UK carry the same drug and Germany has the drug at a lower price, then the US will match the price of that drug that Germany carries. Okay, moving on. How will provisions in the One Big Beautiful Bill play out over the coming years? Joining us to discuss is Michael Busler, professor of finance at Stockton University. So Michael, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. And as you're aware, at the core of this is making provisions from the 2017 tax cuts permanent, right? So what does this actually mean for households over the long term?
So in 2017, President Trump said, look, all Americans are paying too much income tax. So he said, I want to be fair to everybody. So I'm going to cut everybody's taxes by 10%. So up and down the line, everybody's tax rates went down by 10%. So everybody benefited from this, except the state and local taxes are no longer deductible on your income tax in full. It was limited to $10,000. And a lot of people in northern New Jersey and New York, Connecticut, were paying very high property taxes, objected to this. So everybody's taxes got cut by 10%. It only lasted, in order to get it passed, it only lasted until the end of 2025, and it would sunset then. So had the Big Beautiful Bill not been passed, everybody's taxes would have gone up by 10%. So by passing this bill, they made the lower tax rates permanent, and that's a good thing for taxpayers, and it's a good thing for the economy. In addition, some of the people that complained that the tax cut wasn't fair because of the limits on state and local taxes, they increased that from 10,000 up to 40,000. So those people should now be relatively happy. In addition, if you work in the hospitality industry, I live near Atlantic City, and there's tens of thousands of people that work here in the hospitality industry. No longer will the tips be taxed. Prior to that, they had some crazy formula. You had to figure out how much your tips were, at least estimate it, and you're being taxed on it. That won't happen anymore. Then a lot of people were working, and their boss would say to them, hey, look, do you want to work overtime? And most people say, look, I just worked all week. I don't want to work Saturday. So they say, well, I'll pay you time and a half. And they said, well, for time and a half, I'll do it. But then that ended up pushing them into a higher tax bracket. And when they saw their take-home pay, it didn't go up by that much. So President Trump said, we're going to eliminate all income taxes on overtime pay. So now when you are asked to work overtime, you're going to earn more money. You're truly going to keep all that money. Social Security, which I think 85% of it is taxable, or at least was taxable. The new bill, it's going to eliminate that. Now, there's some income limits on it. So it's going to eliminate that. But people who live just on Social Security are going to get a big break here. So it's real good for taxpayers. One other big point, let me say, when business makes an investment, let's say they buy a building for $1 million, the IRS says you can recover your $1 million investment, but you have to do it over 25 years. So you take $40,000 a year, 25 into $1 million, $40,000 a year each year as depreciation expense to recover your capital investment. Now you can write off 100% of the investment in the year that you make the investment. So that will be a big incentive for business investment to increase, because they're going to recover a lot of their capital really in the first year. So the whole point of this bill was to keep tax rates low for all Americans, and in some special cases, they reduce tax rates even further.
Well, Michael, I got to say, that was a very comprehensive answer. You answered like 2 of my questions in a single response.
Excuse me.
But let's talk about, besides the no tax on tips and overtime, there's a less talked about thing in the bill, which is it also raises the cap on the state and local tax deduction from $10,000 to $40,000, right? And
Yes.
The Heritage Foundation says this is a bad policy, that it would primarily reduce the taxes of the wealthy or high-income individuals. So how do you view this? How do you view the higher SALT deduction?
So on the positive side, people who live in areas where real estate taxes and other state and local taxes are high, they're going to get a bigger tax break. The Heritage Foundation says, now, wait a minute. These people that live in areas where state and local taxes are high, they're fairly high income earners. So when you give them a tax deduction, you're really asking the rest of the country's taxpayers to pay part of that tax bill for you, and that's not really fair. So the Heritage Foundation has a very good argument, and from an economic standpoint, I would agree with them. From a political standpoint, raising the state and local tax deduction will get more people in support of the bill, and from a political standpoint, that's a good thing. But Heritage Foundation is absolutely right. You're asking taxpayers from all over the country to pay part of your state and local tax bill.
Okay, how will this bill have an overall effect, if any, on the federal deficit over the short term or long term?
So one thing you're always worried about when you cut taxes, tax revenue is going to go down, and the tax revenue goes down, the deficit gets worse. What the premise is here, that by cutting the taxes, giving people more money to spend, and by creating an environment where business will respond to the higher demand, people have more money to spend, that increases demand in the economy. But if business responds to that by increasing supply, it won't be inflationary. And if they're increasing supply, you're increasing output. So even though you're taxing at a lower rate, with the economic growth and the higher income generated, you'll probably take in more tax revenue than you did before. And that's what the assumption is. But you're absolutely right. We have to be concerned with the deficit every year and the total of that, the public debt. The president says if he can get economic growth up to 4%, some of my colleagues think growth will hit up to 5% next year. I'm not sure of that. But if it does, then total tax revenue will increase, even though the tax rates, income is taxed at a lower rate.
Okay, Michael, just one last thing. With the time we have left, can I get your thoughts on President Trump announcing the warrior dividend of $1,776 to be paid before Christmas? What do you think the goal of this military bonus is?
Personally, I think this is a great idea. People that work in the military are relatively low paid, and a lot of times they're not appreciated, and they're laying their lives on the line, literally, in some cases every day. So President Trump says, look, here's a way for us to thank you. We're going to give you a $1,776 Christmas bonus at the end of this year. It'll amount to about $2 billion overall. And you say, well, look, we're trying to keep the deficit down. But President Trump says, look, my tax revenues, my tariff revenues have generated hundreds of billions of dollars. I think we should take $2 billion of that and show our service people that we appreciate what they're doing. They're away from their families for months, maybe even longer at a time. They're not very well paid, and in some instances, they're not looked upon very highly by the public. So here's one way for the U.S. government to say thank you to all these people that are defending our country, defending freedom, and defending democracy. It's not a lot of money in the big scheme of things. I think it's a great idea.
Well, okay, Michael, well said. That should do it for today. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Don. You as well.
NTD has one student's experience of the Brown University shooting and how the community came together during this tough situation. More news after this break.
You see certain things get reincarnated in your children. My daughter is very much inspired by my wife's artistic pursuits. So my daughter started making necklaces. She makes what we call affirmation fashion. I tell her every day that your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. And if there's anything better than being beautiful, it's being smart. And if there's anything better than being smart, it's being kind. And reaffirming that every day is our method of making sure her chin never drops. My dad wasn't around, and I remember riding a bike and falling off and cutting myself, and me never just wanted to get back on it. People ask, how your children learn how to ride a bike, and you didn't. I didn't teach them. I just created an environment where they taught themselves, and all I had to do was be there.
We said we'd never give in to a meltdown.
Okay.
And we'd never babysit with a screen. We said we'd never let the toys take over.
Mariella!
Never leave the house looking, well, and never let them out of our sight.
Skylar, come here.
Cars get hot fast, and kids can be at risk. Before you leave the car, always stop, look, lock.
For decades, I've taught you everything I know. How to safely build a fire, and how to control the flames. But I can only teach wildfire prevention. Only you can prevent wildfires.
Authorities say the suspect responsible for the deadly Brown University shooting is dead. And investigators also say he killed an MIT professor 2 days after the rampage at Brown. And during the Brown University shooting, students were put into an unimaginable situation. The vice president of the Taiwanese Graduate Association was nice enough to share his story with NTD Sean Marshall. Let's take a look at that.
The Brown University shooting was tragic, but it also showed how the community can work together to get through tough and confusing times.
Because the pace of the investigation was so slow, of course people were wondering what's taking so long.
Ian Liu, the vice president of the Taiwanese Graduate Student Association, was headed to the Providence Public Library to watch a film hosted by the Taiwan Boston Film Festival. But everyone's plans took an abrupt turn.
And around 3:52, I was waiting for the bus near the Barris and Holly building, which is where the shooting happened. And as I got on the bus, I gradually began to hear more police sirens. And around 4:22, we all got the university-wide text alerts. After the event took place, and after the movie finished, we sheltered in place around the RISD art studio.
In a situation that echoes the COVID pandemic, student testing and lives were turned upside down.
The exams were all canceled, so there's three options that the university is offering for us. One is a satisfactory or no credit option. One is to calculate the final grade based on everything that happened before the event. And the third one is, so if your course has a final project, you can finish it, but with an extended deadline.
Following the shooting, the Rhode Island Chinese Christian Church immediately organized volunteers to deliver meals to the injured and their families at the hospital and to provide transportation for students leaving school. A pastor at the church told Epoch Times this statement: "If we keep focusing on the darkness, we will always feel that we are suffering from it. We will not be able to escape the cycle of fear and anxiety, and we will not be able to live a normal life."
Students who are not necessarily students, but the Providence community and Brown alumni coming around to give support, such as financial support. There's a lot of GoFundMe and fundraiser campaigns for the transportation. A lot of people who have cars are offering free rides. A lot of stores are offering free food for students. Uber and Lyft have a discount promo code for Brown students. And there's a lot of these things. And if you go to the Barris and Holly building, every day there's a booth, a table there, and people have an ID card on there, have a card hanging that says "I can help," and they will talk to you. They'll give you free hugs. There's hand warmers. There's coffee, and if you need a ride, they'll give it to you. So a lot of this supportive things. It's more about the intention, I guess, and you can definitely feel the connection the community has within and among each other.
To hopefully put an end to the confusion, fear, and paranoia between students and neighbors, police have finally identified the shooter, who is said to have also taken his own life. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
The British government confirmed that their foreign office was hacked 2 months ago. We have that story and more after this break.
This is pho-licious. Now, what is pho? It's an authentic Vietnamese noodle dish. Pho-licious chicken pho brings the comforting, aromatic flavors of Vietnam to your bowl. And Mama Thu's signature spice blend. Well, this chicken pho is as close to homemade as it gets without the wait. Some cubed chicken, a little lime, and then the magic moment. See you soon, my friends.
Pho-licious is now available at your local Walmart or walmart.com.
This land, our America, built on hard work, determination, and grit. Sometimes the days run long, but hope, it never runs out, even when the food does, for America's veterans, working parents, even kids. Because in every corner of every town, even yours, millions of hard-working neighbors are facing a hunger crisis. Many for the very first time. In this land of plenty, affording food shouldn't require second jobs and third shifts or choosing between your groceries and bills. Today, you can help change that. Call or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org and give $19 a month, less than 63 cents a day, to help every neighbor get the food they urgently need. Because taking care of each other is what makes America strong. We're Feeding America, not just a name, but an action. Working with over 200 local food banks like the ones in your community. And demand is soaring.
You go to the grocery store, you spend $100, and $100 is a new $20 bill.
Even with 2 full-time jobs, it's hard to make ends meet.
These are tough times, but when we stand together, we become the very best of a strong America. Please call or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org. Just $19 a month can feed a family today. And your first gift can double an impact. Plus, we'll send you this free canvas bag as a reminder of the hope you're delivering.
When it comes down to it, it's about taking care of your family first and the loved ones that you need to provide for.
Because you're not just giving food, you're fueling resilience for people across the nation. You're feeding America. Call or go online today to helpfeedingamerica.org, and your gift can double an impact.
I trod on my glasses yesterday, and I had to pay up front for a new pair that I can't even pick up for another 10 days. So I looked for another way. And I found Select Specs. I ordered online. My new glasses just arrived this morning, and I can pay over the next few weeks. This is the way to buy glasses.